Hello there. Alright, this is Century Express versus Starmei. It's from the first round of the ORAS 1U tournament. Starmei's a member of the council, whereas Century Express is merely a player who's achieved things in other tiers. There should be a good series, and it's being done from the replays, as you should be able to clearly see already. It did happen in the first round, and we're now on to the final, and I've been a bit late getting to this, but nevertheless, I figured that it would be a good series. Stretches out several games. It's a best of 5. We should see some interesting teams and matches, so let us go. Okay, so this team on Starmei's end looks like fairly typical sort of quite offensive balanced squad. Century Express has got some strange choices, Dialga and Latios together, a Scolipede which has huge issues with Mega Diancie, and a Mega Aerodactyl which, while some of these Pokemon are decent in ORAS Uber's Smogon's tier, they're not so good in this tier. I've never seen a Mega Aerodactyl used before successfully in this tier. Likewise with Scolipede, which has just these issues with the magic bounces that make it a much poorer choice. Anyway, we see Dialga lead versus Diancie. Presumably we're going to see a Protect here, whilst Dialga will show if it has something like Flash Cannon. Let's see what it has. Yeah, Protect here. Obviously he wants to get up rocks, and the threat of Flash Cannon is enough to be able to get that. He goes Kyogre on the rocks, but Kyogre can't do much to threaten Dialga, especially if it's quite specially defensive, and it eats a Draco Meteor. It's evidently a Scarf or Specs Palkia, and then Latios comes in and easily takes the attack. Alright, do we see a Roost or do we see an attack? We see a Grass Knot, which Genesect takes easily with its 4 times resistance, forces it out. And U-turns. In comes Diancie to prevent any toxic spikes going up, and it can attack fairly freely with Diamond Storm and Moonblast, which do decent damage to both of to anything on Century Express's team. It gets off an Endeavor, which is probably the most it could achieve, and then he sends out Kyogre if it's alright. He's revealing Water Spout, which makes it seem likely that it's either Scarf or Specs. I think though that he ought to have possibly sacked Diancie, although Latias does take the hits, since it is borderline useless, but since Latias took it so well and he wasn't bluffing Scarf, it worked out pretty well. On the predicted Draco there, going Diancie, which has worked out well, and he goes back into Kyogre, and he Ice Beams, which does enough to kill the Dialga and prevents Latios from coming in easily. It does, however, manage to take the hit, and Draco Meteor backs. Overall, it's looking pretty even so far, but Genesect here to get Starmei back their momentum, and it takes out Latios, but it does come at the cost of some HP lost from the Stealth Rock damage. Mega Aerodactyl comes in and taunts, but it eats a Draco Meteor. He was trying to prevent the defog there. However, Starmei doesn't have any rock resist at all on this team, full stop, and that does a lot of damage, and combined with Earthquake is enough to remove it. Scarf Genesect here can U-turn for momentum, and unless, well, he seems to feel Aerodactyl sufficiently threatening, which versus Starmei's team I'd say so, that he uses that to gain momentum there. Hey, Ice Beams with what is now revealed to confirm to be Scarf Ogre, and Psyshocks. We see Latias here. He Psyshocks, getting some decent damage on it. Evil Towel, which could be some probably the Life Orb, or as we see from that damage, is physically defensive, which takes the hit, KOs in return, and Scarf Genesect should win the game. So that was a pretty fun one. I think Century Express's team was a bit odd, but I don't hugely like Starmei's either, but it was a very close match, and no obvious bad plays from either, although I'm sure there's always room for improvement. Alright, on to the second game. Starmei's bringing his YZ running Mega Torpedo squad. Century Express is bringing a Sun Balance which has Dialga for Stealth Rocks, which suggests an offensive Groudon, which could work out okay, but I don't like how shaky that team looks versus Xerneas. I'd never approve of Dialga plus Ho. It never seems to work, although everyone keeps bringing it, and I don't understand it. Anyway, aside from that, Starmie's got some decent enough generic Hyper Offense, in spite of having Sharpedo, although Hyper Offense does take a lot of skill to build in this tier, surprisingly. Perhaps not as much as other playstyles, but it's much trickier than in most tiers, due to the prevalence of Magic Bouncers and it being a very defensively focused sort of tier. There's a handful of great heavy hitters, but for the most part, there's certainly limitations. And we revealed Mega Mewtwo we revealed Life Orb Mewtwo. Taunts, but gets hit by a Draco Meteor. No rocks for Dialga, but there goes Mewtwo, which is very threatening to these sorts of teams if Dialga is the best possible check, which doesn't like taking a Focus Blast. Dark Pulse is there, which critical hits. Obviously, he aimed to chip it, but since it got a critical hit, he could just take it down. But he doesn't. Okay, he can go in Zekrom here, and he can fire off an Outrage if he has it. But that Groudon's very physically defensive. Takes it. Do we see Proceres Blades? He has to take it out. And we see a Roar from this Groudon, but yeah, the Shadow Force should take it out, and I doubt that there's an Arceus Water. Will that be Will-O-Wisp? No, he reveals Toxic. I heard about that previously after the match from Starmie, that he brought Toxic instead of Wisp, which is very much an ORAS Uber set and is absolutely dreadful in this tier. But Starmie forfeits anyway, so Century Express wins that one. Alright, next one. We see an interesting looking Sun Balance with Cloyster and Mega Kangaskhan from Starmie, but it does look pretty good. And Century Express bringing some sort of Hyper Offense. It's not a sample team one though. And it seems okay. I think maybe did I build a team like that? I'm not sure. Maybe it all sort of starts to look a bit similar. No, both look like good teams here. It should be a decent matchup, but I think there's a lot for Deoxys Speed to struggle with here. He can Volt Switch on this Cloyster, and then he's going Deoxys Speed here, which I don't totally understand. Well, maybe he predicted the Icicle Spear. But wow, that manages to put it into Ice Shard range. He taunts and Icicle Spears again. He doesn't get up Stealth Rocks. He has to taunt there to prevent a possible Shell Smash. But that Cloyster did a decent amount of work. At least it prevented rocks, which is significant. Arceus Ghost comes in and a Focus Blast, almost taking it out there. But Dark Void comes down from Darkrai due to the absence of any Magic Bouncers on that team. That's effective. In comes Mega Mewtwo. But Fake Out should do a decent chunk there, yes, dealing about 40%. And will we see Sucker Punch? No, we see a Switch Out. He's got a good batch of Mewtwo checks there with Latios, Darkrai, Arceus Ghost, and Mega Kangaskhan all together. It's a tricky team for Mewtwo to do much work with, and that's where the bulk of his speed appears to be. The Xerneas reveals leftovers, so it's probably Scarf Zekrom instead. He decides to sack it, not wanting to just take Fake Out damage, and with the gained leftovers recovery, it takes it out of frustration range and KOs the Kangaskhan, which is nicely done. In comes the Arceus Ghost, though, with Darkrai down due to that wonderfully done Focus Blast. Oh, there's some comments. Anyway, this is that predicted Focus Blast. That Arceus Ghost is a huge threat, but now Outrages can be fired off by Zekrom. Latios is sat since it's sleeping and therefore not very useful. And in comes Groudon, which can take another hit and can probably even use the opportunity to set up Stealth Rocks if you wanted, but at this point in the match, it's probably not worthwhile. In comes Mewtwo, and he should probably go for the damage on Arceus Ghost at this point, but no. Out comes E-Killer, which Shadow Claws it, but it's not enough to KO, and he reveals Life Orb. All in all, though, depending on Mewtwo's set, this could be Century Express's game if he has Focus Blast, which I don't think he's revealed, but I can't hover over it, unlike in the match. So, if that's okay, and it's not Sash or Scarf, instead it's a standard Life Orb, and it dies to the Focus Blast, and Century Express pulls through. Wow. So, Century Express is up 2-1, and we're on to the fourth game. Will it be the final game? We see Mega Slowbro possibly from here. A peculiar team with the Double Dragon from Starmei there. I built something sort of similar. And we see an interesting stall on Century Express's end with Blandora's T, notably instead of Glissaur. Chansey, Lugia, Scizor. It looks a pretty decent build actually, and I like the look of it. Will it have any holes? This is where we find out. Dialga comes out, Arceus Grass, and eats a Fire Blast with a Life Orb Dialga, which is not a common set. He gets up his rocks then, since he's bound to switch out and go into Chansey. He soft boils there, basically attempting to Life Orb stall it, but instead he goes to Ferrothorn to try and get Spikes. In comes, however, the Lando T. He was trying to bring in. Pause it for a second. He was trying to lure in Arceus Grass to defog with the use of that Ferrothorn, but instead in comes Landora's T, possibly trying to take a Thunder Wave, but yeah, he goes to Dialga in order to pressure it, and it works very well, since it forces out the Dialga there. At that point, though, Starmie brings in Slowbro, and out comes Chansey to take an attack from the Dialga, since perhaps he's fearing a fast Dialga. Obviously, Slowbro does a bit much there. He goes for Toxic on it, but Ferrothorn comes in. Will we see Arceus Grass come in yet, or will we see Pressured? And it does come in, and Dialga comes back in again in order to threaten it, forcing Chansey in again. Fire Blast Chansey, but it misses, however, due to its Great Bolt, that's not too important. And he goes to Arceus Grass as it takes a Draco Meteor, and there goes his access to defog, which is pretty huge, and that offensive Dialga working up very well in this matchup. Due to that team, you can imagine a more offensive Dialga being effective. He goes for his rocks there. Dialga reveals itself to be faster than his Lando T. Earthquakes, and now Dialga is in Life Orb range. Since the Lando T doesn't really appear to be answering anything significant on Starmie's team, it's worthwhile to sacrifice it for rocks and removing Dialga, which can force his hand. In comes Chansey, which is down to 50%, but it can soft-boiled here fairly safely. And a surprise block from Starmie. Block, Calm Mind, Rest, and Moonblast looks to be the set, but this is a bad situation until Chansey reveals Snatch, which is a common enough move, and it's putting Starmie in a bad situation here. So in comes Ferrothorn again on the free Snatch from the Chansey, which has proved to be effective this time at ousting the surprising Xerneas set. However, with the absence of hazard clearing due to the death of Arceus Grass, thanks to that offensive Dialga, he's free to spike up here, which he almost definitely has. Although that could be defog Scizor, is unlikely. Anyway, what does he bring in? He does bring in Scizor. We don't see any recovery, we don't expect. We expect either Choice Band or Mega. Do we see a Mega Evolution? In comes Giradna, which can take anything it does, including that U-turn which is resisted, and it can threaten with Will-O-Wisp, or possibly a surprising fire move. Anyway, what does he bring in? In comes Chansey. I think that at this point, although Starmie's going to have a difficult time breaking him, he can slowly work up the hazard advantage against that Chansey, and that should be enough to win the game. But it will be tricky since he can't break that Chansey with any of his attackers, so he had to rely on beating that hazard setter, which he did in this matchup. But unless we see some surprising win condition like Calm Mind, Arceus, Giratini Origin, or some sort of physical Arceus form, which could be effective in this matchup with Lugia crippled by the rocks. And Starmie's going for his layers of spikes. Do we see superpower? No, we see a U-turn there. And he can go for another layer of spikes here if he wants to. And it's looking very bad there now for Century Express here. I think that his stall team simply can't break this Ferrothorn before he is broken. Alright, Xerneas is fine there, and Ink can come back in Ferrothorn again. Or we can Moonblast, which is also fun considering that he's Leech Seed up, keeping Xerneas fairly healthy. Out it comes, and that Scizor is taking some serious damage there. Anyway, let's see. What does he do? Does he Roost here? He's going Slowbro, predicting that there won't be a U-turn, and he takes it, and he's evidently wants to keep Regenerator up, so he's not Mega Evolving. In comes Chansey. He slacks off. Oh, he doesn't even have Multiscale. But given that this matchup is probably not too important, we'll see. Alright, in comes Kyogre on Slowbro, and Ferrothorn makes its way in. He's Scald's fishing for a burn, and he gets it first time, and Leech Seed misses. Which is bad news for Starmie, but he can probably handle it. In comes Lando T, sacrifice forcing him to avoid receiving Leftovers recovery. But then he brings in Chansey, which doesn't make any sense to me since he can Leech Seed here and regain all that delicious lost health from the burn. In comes Lugia. Yeah, his stall team has issues with that Ferrothorn. He can't break it. He doesn't even have spikes of his own. I'm not sure what the win condition is supposed to be. Perhaps that's Calm Mind Kyogre, but that just gets destroyed by Ferrothorn too. So, in both of these teams' cases, I think we're seeing flaws in each of them. It doesn't necessarily make them bad teams, but it's interesting seeing the strengths here. So, Judgment there. But that does too much, and down goes Scizor. In comes Chansey, which he decides there to switch out, since it can Toxic it and then Snatch Refresh. Oof, that Dragon Tail does a lot, yeah. That Chansey beats all of Starmie's offenses. It's his best option to try and get rid of Kyogre, and he takes out Giratina, which it wasn't probably staying around for too long with. Okay, in comes Arceus Dark, and it's revealed to be a Scarf Ogre, which is terrible. He's got an absolute lack of offense. It's like running GSC stall with only a Curse Lash. You're not breaking anything with it. If it was Specs Ogre, perhaps, or Calm Mind Kyogre. Even though unless it's Specs, it's going to have huge issues with Ferrothorn. But I guess it's sort of a cheap way to get around Mewtwo without running a Dark type. But Dark types are good. I think the team probably has issues with SD Arceus Ghost as well. So anyway, this is very much starting to become in the favour of Starmie with an hour 4-2 advantage, and Ferrothorn able to sit here and outstall for days. Lugia is healthy enough to switch in here if he likes. But there's no way that I see Century Express winning this. This Ferrothorn just won't be breakable. and it's not going to die quickly. He brings in Arceus Dark on the roost, and he judgments there, which allows him to force us off board and get a recover off there, and then he goes into Ferrothorn, avoiding the Toxic, which he needs to, even though he has Refresh. Alright, in comes Ferrothorn and Leech Seed again. Oh, and in comes Xerneas in order to try and attempt to wake up perhaps. But yeah, Lugia here is not enough to break it with only Stealth Rocks to chip it at. It's simply not enough, and in comes Arceus Dark. Do we see a double to Pharaoh? Does it really matter? Okay, Calm Minds here. Calm Minds again. And Judgment's still doing paltry damage. And now he can spam Snatch. And in comes Xerneas again, trying to burn more sleep turns, which I think is Starmie's idea here. I'm not sure exactly how this can play out, but I think it's going to be a long game. So I'll just go and briefly get a drink. As we see, come on the blue, sorry, I just had to go get a drink. And pause the game. But yeah, let's see what happens. In comes Chansey in order to spam Snatch, and we see a rest. How humid. Soft boiling here. But I think this turns into a PP stall at this rate. That's heavily in Stormy's favour. Let's see what the Slowbro set is, though. We've yet to see much from it other than Slack Off. Do we see Toxic, which would be game-changing? No, we see Rest. Alright, I'm going to skip through the turns much quicker now, until something significant seems to be happening. We see Aromatherapy on Chansey, which is interesting. Scald on Slowbro, which burns Lugia, which makes it more easy to pressure. Is that regular Slowbro, or is it Mega that just needs the Regenerator for this match? It's just got Scald, Rest, Slack Off, and something else. Wait, did he manage to get a block off on this? I don't think he has. But it has Whirlwind, so it doesn't really matter. You can just sit there and Calm Mind until he decides to phase it. He Moonblasts and he KOs it. Alright, so in comes Ferrothorn in order to get Leech Seed up on it, which it does manage to, which is quite necessary there, and then Ferrothorn pretty much stalls it safely here, and he reveals the bizarre Iron Head. Goodness knows why he has that instead of Gyro Ball, but he spams Snatch for reasons I'm not sure of. The only thing it could really be doing is spiking of any use, so maybe he just wants it to die and end the game, which we do see, so there's the game over. Okay, well that wasn't so exciting in the end, but with 2-2 each, with one remaining game, which we see a sand stall, no sand defense even, sort of sand defense from Starmie, and previously seen Sun Balance from Century Express again with the horrid Dialga and Ho combination. Anyway, let's see how this matchup goes. So we see leading with the Arceus. Oh, sorry, I misclicked there. Leading with the Arceus form there, which does threaten the Extra Drill, which is presumably what he wants to anti-lead Dialga with. And Diancie, and would allow him to get up Rocks versus those. But instead, Arceus Water anti-leads that. However, it's not very threatening, and he has multiple options he can go to here. Most pertinently being Kyogre and Latias, although I don't like taking Will-O-Wisp, and we see an Ice Beam, because this must be some strange ORAS set. And it recovers on the water spout, which isn't breaking it. So how is he going to break it? And, well, if he had a Will-O-Wisp Arceus Water, it would be amazing versus Starmie's team. But no, instead we see a Toxic Ice Beam one, which is presumably an ORAS Uber set, and it's dreadfully ineffective here. Psyshock there does a whopping 57% to that Diancie, and in comes Scizor on the Protect Mega Evolve there. Do we see Mega? We do see Mega, as was expected, but in comes Ho, which is another large threat to Starmie's team, but he has Tyranitar and Kyogre to potentially answer it. It takes a Sacred Fire, but it doesn't like being burnt. It reveals Life Orb, so a potential Life Orb boost Earthquake incoming, which Starmie predicts, plays around, and goes to Latias with, which is free to fire off attacks, but Dialga, which is a great answer to it, comes in, and there's a Draco Meteor, which does a lot of damage, so that mustn't be specially defensive. Instead, it reveals its Life Orb, so there goes that. And in comes Kyogre, which can't do much. The Origin Pulses there, predicting perhaps a Thunder. Okay, and in comes again the Scizor, which is abusing the fact that it's running Toxic. But if it was Wisp, you'd be having a hard time with the absence of anything to switch in and enjoy taking the burns. It wouldn't be a huge bait for something on Century Express's team. And in comes a Thunder, which forces it out. And in comes Kyogre, which thunders again just to make sure it stays out. In comes Tyranitar sacking itself. And instead we see a Roar. That's Arceus Electric there. Earthquake predicted here, or Precipice Blades, and in comes Kyogre again, which can Origin Pulse and is virtually guaranteed to KO something. In comes Diancie, which gets the sack, Origin Pulse is revealed, and then he goes here to Arceus Water to recover, presumably, and he does, and he abuses that by going to Excadrill, but in the rain it doesn't want to take a Judgment, although it's revealed it doesn't even have it, it has Ice Beam. So he spins, Extra reveals that it's an offensive Life Orb set, and then Scizor comes in to abuse it, but he gets frozen, and presumably he tries to Thaw here, but to no avail. Excadrill is predicted incoming here, but he stays in with Scizor, which still remains defrosted. He kind of goes in with Excadrill and deals damage with the Earthquake there. But I'm not sure how Starmie will quite win this. I think Arceus Electric could be a threat here. But, he reveals Grass Knot, which is a really bizarre choice of move there. The Zekrom is a fantastic answer to that set. Although he gets recover there. Can Outrage versus it, but yeah. The most it can do is Outrage versus it, which isn't enough, really. It does 57%, so he needs to fish for a critical hit. And he also has the option of going Scizor. That is a whopping good amount there. So presumably he does want to switch out there. Speaking of the Scizor specifically, but okay, Judgments and Toxic is landed, which is a big deal. But if spamming Outrage, Zekrom does come in handily. But he goes for Bolt Strike instead, trying to abuse that Toxic, and he recovers. But there's nothing he can really do against it here with the Judgment Grass Knot set other than stall the PP, which it has to be said is useful, especially with his shaky accuracy. And it looks like he's going to do that. He brings in Kyogre, which dies of course to the Bolt Strike, and then he can come in and recover again with the Arceus Electric. So a cunning strategy of PP stalling here, and it looks to be successful. Although not the most fun way of ending the game, and Starmie's bizarre set let him break through the Groudon, but the Zekrom still rules him. The poor Arceus Water set on Century Express's end presumably lost him the match here, really. Struggle comes out. Lack of any other option at all, full stop, since he is choice locked into Scarf. And Struggle recoil here should KO it. So Frozen Scissor to win the game. That was a strange and interesting match. But I don't know, I felt that Century Express bought a bad set, which lost him the game, and Starmei got some weird sets and head off. So that was an interesting series. It wasn't masterful, and there's definitely a lot of room for players to be better than this in this tier, but it's a decent little showcase of what the tier can be. I hope you enjoyed. Come back for more. The finals will be on this channel. Keep your eyes peeled. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'm sure it helps us out, but we're still small. It's not as big a deal, is it? Please do that. See ya.